Welcome to Greater Faith Outreach Ministries, reaching the world with the love of God.
Hello, 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 and welcome again to Greater Faith Outreach Ministry here at BD Local Studio. I'm your host, Elizabeth Hamilton, and over there is my co host, Wendy Sumstrom.
Hi, all.
We have a wonderful program today, a special presentation. We're going to talk more extensively on this traffic dilemma here. We have Phil Martin. You know, a lot of you know him from a lot of different outreaches and different things he does. But, you know, he does TV, radio, he talks to schools and different things. But he's going to talk today about sex trafficking, okay? And he's done a lot of research on it, and he's out there on the field. This is something that is very close to his heart. And the name of the organization is called Influencers and Musicians Against Sex Slavery. So our guest today is Eric Hayes. Hi, Eric.
How are you?
And Phil Martin. Hi, Phil.
Hey, good afternoon.
How are you guys doing
Good.
today? Glad to have you here. So, Eric, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your program and the mission of it.
Well, so Influencers and Musicians Against Sex Slavery, which we shorten it up to call it IMAS, because it's a lot easier to sing that whole entire line. It was created really to fill a gap in this particular space. So there's a lot of really terrific organizations out there that are doing a lot to help fight and combat human trafficking and sex slavery. But the problem is a lot of those organizations, their revenue, their capital is tied up in actually going out and rescuing and providing aftercare. So there's a massive gap. And one of the gaps is awareness and being able to create funding to help support those organizations. In fact, there's two really important keys to helping end this issue, and that is awareness, making sure that people know about it, it's in front of them all the time so they can't turn away from it. But number two is also ensuring that the funds are raised, because this is an industry that is upwards of over $100 billion a year. It's the third fastest growing crime in the world.
And Phil, we know you have extensive background in this. I know that, but tell the viewers a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. I have been fighting the epidemic now for well over 10 years. I was someone who really didn't know anything about the issue to begin with. I was approached by a youth pastor friend of mine who started telling me more about it. And right then and there, I just heard enough. I was disgusted, by what I heard, and knew I had to make a difference. So for me, just started to take a look at, what some of my different gift sets are, my interests, and coincidentally, what we're doing here is around the issue of around the music and entertainment industry. And for me, I had always been connected to musicians and people in the arts, and so right away, I hosted a concert or an outdoor festival. And really, that's kind of how I took off in that regard and started building my relationships with the different media sources that are out there and creating awareness. So for me, it was really authentic. I did not have a plan to do this full time, and God just really put it on my heart when I met with my friend, and here we are.
And that's what I was going to say. God has opened a door for you to get in on this. He's opening different vistas and different platforms. So, and you're joining up with them together. That's awesome,
Right.
how God is doing this.
Right.
So, Wendy, you have a question?
So,
For
Phil,
them.
what is human trafficking and what is modern day slavery?
Yeah. So human trafficking is where there are individuals who take other individuals and they put them out in the market for sale. So in essence, it's taking an individual and it's turning someone into your own product and a commodity to be used on the sex market to make money on your behalf. So you have someone who is a pimp, someone who's in organized crime, in a gang, and they want to make money as quickly as possible. So what do they have to do? They have to turn a girl or a young boy in some cases into a product or a commodity. They put them online for sale. They put them on the streets. They make them work in strip clubs, massage parlors, different places throughout local communities to make money. And the people that they're victimizing, the victims, survivors, if you will, they are not making any money in this. They're income generators for these pimps, organized crime organizations, and local gangs. And so that's really what it is. in essence, is that you're taking, God's most prized possession, which is humanity, and turning that into a commodity for sex.
Sad.
And I see that you have you brought an image. We'd like to see that image up on the screen, and then you can kind of elaborate on that. Okay.
Sure. So the image that you're seeing right now, this is really just a street prostitution here in the Seattle area. And so when we go out, and been out in the past as well with law enforcement, with other departments, they take images, of what they see, and nothing that's private or anything like that, but just on the streets. We want to give people a sense of, who is out there on the streets, and what's going on. And so that's the image that you're seeing, is just young girls who are being approached by buyers in vehicles on street corners. And that's what you're seeing in front of you.
Wow. And you've been on Como for for a few times. You've been on there. This last time you was at Bellevue. Could you tell us what you shared with them?
Sure. Here in Bellevue, or even in Seattle, it's not uncommon where you see trafficking taking places in a lot of the hotels or apartment complexes. And so I've talked in the past about Bellevue, but there was just a bust that happened a couple weeks ago, just towards the end of July, in Bellevue. And so I was just given a report on that. And so basically just where there's different websites online that some of these organized crime organizations, individuals, they put girls for sale online. And so people can actually go online. You're probably familiar with Backpage.com,
Right,
which
right.
is another one of those websites where it's really, if you have ever been on there, where girls and young boys are for sale, and literally, I mean, you can have someone within minutes. And so it's pretty scary what you
It
see.
is.
So
Yes.
It is.
Yep.
It's really heartbreaking. It's
It is.
kind of heavy, even talking about this, because these are children we're talking about. And it's getting even worse because a lot of children are homeless now. You see a lot of this, and it's heartbreaking. And so I'm glad you guys are here to to bring awareness to everyone. Watch your children, make sure what's going on what they're watching on the internet and all these different things. Be aware, okay? It doesn't just happen in other countries. It's happening right here.
That's right.
Is that right, Eric?
No, that's actually very true. In fact, the UN even indicates that 80% of all trafficking is for the purposes of sexual exploitation, and the United States is listed as the top destination.
So, Phil, how many people currently find themselves in trafficking?
yeah, so here just within our area, there's anywhere on a given day between 300 to 500 kids, if you will, under the age of 18 that find themselves in a trafficking situation. In the United States, if we take a look at it, it's between 100 to 300,000. That would be under the age of 18. If you took a look at all forms of trafficking, not just sex trafficking, but if you looked at labor trafficking, domestic servitude, and others, what you would see is upwards of 800,000 within the United States. And so it's a troubling problem. And as Eric alluded to, it's, well around $100 billion. It's more than Nike. It's more than a lot of the major companies that you know of. Their collective gross income every single year. And so it's a big problem, and that's why we're here to talk about it today.
Yeah. And the demand is so huge. And like you said, this revenue is coming in for selling babies, children, In the Bible, they talked about that with Balak, destroying children. So we have to really understand what's going on.
Right.
We really must keep hammering at it.
Amen.
Right.
We can't talk
We
about
do.
it enough.
We do.
Because these are our children. These are our future, And God has put something in these children that's for the world. And that's why the enemy is attacking them so much, because they possess something that we all need.
Yes.
So we
Right.
have to protect that in them.
This is true.
They're a
This is
treasure in
true.
darkness.
They're treasures.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it is. It's an issue that is extremely dark.
Yes.
And people, for obvious reasons, they don't want to deal with it because we don't want to look into the darkness. But what IMAS was created to do was to be able to bring light into that darkness, because the reality is, if we continue to turn a blind eye to this, if we don't even give real thought to the innocent souls that are involved, we're losing our souls. And you know, when I was 18 and I was getting married, my ex sister-in-law at the time, was almost taken and sold into trafficking. And that's what first brought it around for me. And knowing what I know, what Phil knows, we can't sit back and do nothing. We have to do this.
And it's wonderful to see men standing up on this issue. We were talking about Ashton Kutcher, is it his name?
Yep.
And he, you know, he's rescued thousands and thousands of children. So it's good. You know, you have women in the round table, but you seldom see the men. So we just thank God for you doing that, standing up and say, hey, this is not right. No man should do this. You know, if you're a real man, you don't do that kind of thing, you know? And you need something. God has grace for everybody, but something's missing. Something's wrong here, you know, when you have to go after children like that. And so to know there's a program to help these men, what is it? Can the men get help?
So there's so much involved with it, and Phil can actually really tap into that just because of his background and experience. But it's mostly men, but there, believe it or not, there are women traffickers as well. And the grooming process that happens from both of them.
Right.
To get in there. But Phil's expertise is really in that area. I created the organization because of what I knew I could do from a business perspective, with my background being in the music industry, having worked for RCA Records, Arista Records, and other companies, having consulted Fortune 100 companies. I know how to build organizations. Brought Phil on because of his expertise and his ability to really understand the nuances of this issue.
So Phil, how can these men get help? Because that's a problem.
Yeah. So when we take a look at the men involved, I think it's really important that if you look at lawmakers, for instance, because there's a lot of people I know in politics, and their function is to create laws to protect kids, right? And then also to work in collaboration with law enforcement to enforce those laws and to build relationships. But when we take a look at men who are primarily buyers of commercial sex, so when we take a look at the whole industry, why does it exist? It exists because there's people who buy commercial sex. So there are men who pimp and they're involved in gangs. There are women who do that as well. They're called madams, or they keep guard of girls in particularly residential homes if they're just in domestic servitude situations. But for men, we have to get them to take ownership for what they've done and really get them to understand that what they're doing is wrong and that they may have an incorrect view of, you know, women in general. And so there could be a lot of reasons why men find themselves in that position. You know, maybe they were abandoned by their parents at a young age. Maybe they were exposed to a lot of sexual abuse. Maybe, you know, there's a lot of anger issues or so forth. There could be a lot of reasons as to why a guy comes to that place to where he justifies in his mind that it's okay to go buy commercial sex, and you know, basically this girl or young boy is just theirs to do whatever they want with, right? Because he paid for it. That's incorrect, right? We got to say something about that. That's not right.
Right.
So we have programs that deal with addiction recovery, you know, spirit, soul, body, mind, will, emotions, and really the full restoration of men. So one of them that a lot of the local churches use, so if there are men that I come in contact with that need help, Celebrate Recovery would be one of those programs. So what I've tried to do is I try to partner with different groups that are out there that are well known, like Life Skills International, Celebrate Recovery, and some of the other ones that really deal with the internal restoration, but then also deal with practical life skills, like how to create a budget, how to effectively communicate with people, conflict resolution management. There's a lot of tools that these men need so that they even have a fighting chance to be productive members of society. And so I think that's really the thing that I found most helpful, is trying to partner with existing programs to create a way for men to have another shot at life, to make better choices, to help change their association. So I think that's key.
Yeah, because we can sit there and reprimand them and tell them that's not right and all that, but they need to know that, you know, there's help, that this is a sin, You know, and if they don't stop, they will end up in hell. It's serious. This is a serious crime, you know, because these are creations of God
Yeah.
that they're tampering with. And so they really need to know that, and then they need to get help after that.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
And so that's good that you involved with programs like that. And so at the end of the program, we're going to give some information so how they can get help.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Eric, how is someone typically trafficked?
Well, Phil kind of already touched on that. So one of the predominant ways is online nowadays. And in fact, one of the things for me that's really scary, I've been blessed. All my kids are grown and gone. I'm on to grandchildren now. But I look at what children do online, whether it's Facebook, through Instagram, through their different social medias. And sometimes these kids come from really good homes. And you would think, oh, they're safe, they're fine. But a lot of times these victims end up being introduced through friends, via other friends, and even further down the line to that man or woman that may end up abducting them. And so a lot of times it starts out that way. And as Phil touched on, the most common way now is through online. They can literally be on hundreds of sites within a few hours. And the access, it has become to where you can order a young girl or even a young boy online for sex easier than buying a pizza.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. And Liz, I'd like to jump into and kind of just expand on that a little bit. What they do here, particularly in the United States, it's different. If you take a look at overseas, the United States, overseas, people are more in a trafficking situation because it's a means of survival. They have to stay alive. And so in a lot of Thailand, Cambodia, and different places, the kids are income generators for their families. So you're not going to see the dad present a lot in their lives. The mother is there, but the mother is selling herself to make money, and so that leaves the kids vulnerable to traffickers. So they're just trying to stay alive. Here in the United States, it's more glamorized. So it's more of people coming from other countries because they see the opportunity here in the U.S., or it's people that already live in the U.S. and they want to be like the person on the magazine cover who drives the cool car, who has the fancy clothes. And so they think that if they get involved in prostitution, then they will, achieve that level of success. But what they don't know on the other side is that, that's not a glamorous lifestyle. They don't know about everything else that we're talking about. And so there's different ways for why people get involved. When we talk about sex trafficking as well here in the United States, there's a trauma bond, is what we call it, that's created. And so basically, guys know who they're looking for. These pimps that are looking for these girls to sell online, they know exactly who they're looking for. They're looking for a vulnerable girl. They're looking for someone who doesn't have a way of getting a job, who doesn't have a good education, who doesn't have access to cash, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you don't have those things in your support system, you have nothing to fall back on, and he knows that. And then also what they're doing is they're building a relationship, because if they can build a relationship, then they have a sense of ownership over you. If all they do is abduct you, then they take you for a while, but then you're still going to try and escape. But if they know things about your family, if they put threats on your life, then the likelihood of you running or going to talk to the cops is not very likely, because you don't want to put your life or the lives of your family members in danger. So that's really how they do it. They build that relationship so they can have a sense of ownership over you, and then you're going to stay involved in the life of trafficking just simply to stay alive.
And that's a horrible entrapment to entrap these girls. And like you said, they give them all the information,
Right.
And they know so much about them because of this trauma bond that they have built up. And I wanted to ask also, what's the biggest myth that people have about sex trafficking?
Yeah. One that comes to mind, I think Eric touched on it a little bit already, but one of the biggest myths is that this happens only to those young boys or young girls who are vulnerable, right? So that I would say would be the majority, but this can also happen to young boys or young girls that come from what we would call healthy families,
Right.
or at least families that are normal families. Just because someone appears to come from a normal family doesn't mean that they can end up in that situation. And so what we find is that a lot of young boys, young girls, when they get to about the age of 15, 16 years old, they're still in the same bracket where they are prime to be trafficked, right? So anywhere from about 11 to the age of 21 here in the United States is primary age for someone who'd be trafficked. So when you're 15, 16, you're looking to experience a level of independence that you didn't have before. And so you think that, well, if I've got my cell phone on me, if I get invited to a party, or if I take a friend with me, then I'll just get out of the situation if something goes down. But that's not the case, because you don't know what those guys know. It's all a part of it's all part of organized crime. It's all a part of a system. They have an agenda. And usually the guy at the party, he's a part of that affiliation. This young girl, she's probably about 80 to 100 pounds. That guy is probably going to be well over 200 pounds. So you physically don't match up. So you can't keep yourself safe. And then also, if you've got a friend with you, what their agenda is to also take your friend into the same lifestyle. And so your friend's not going to be of any help to you. If they can get two girls at the same time, they're going to make an effort to do that. So I hope that helps answer that a little bit better.
Yes, it does.
It's also just some things that I've learned about it is that a lot of times these young girls come from good families, but these guys come in as boyfriends and they lavish them with gifts, lots of gifts. And then all of a sudden they start pimping them. And they've got them on tape so that they can sit there and tell them that they will show that tape on the internet if they tell anybody. And so, we really have to tell our children, I mean, if we don't tell our children, the devil's going to tell the children different. So we need to really protect our children in many ways, don't we?
Yes, very much so.
So.
It's one of those things where here's a myth that you will hear a lot, is that the women that are in strip clubs are there to pay for college. And what typically happens more often than not is this young girl is going to college, they're getting behind on their student loans, or they know they're racking it up, and you'll have a guy come in and pose as their boyfriend and get their trust and say, well, you know something? Here's a good way for you to start making money. And at first, it seems fun, it seems glamorous, like what Phil has certainly touched on, but then the abuse and the control starts to get in there. But by that time, the young girl's in love with the guy. And when we get emotions involved and you think that this person loves you and cares about you, sometimes your ability to reason shuts down. And that also happens quite a bit.
Yeah. So as Christians, the word says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted and to preach deliverance to the captives and the recovering of the sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. So I would say that's setting those people who are bruised free, at liberty. That is our job as Christians to to help them be free and to be set free, is it not?
Yeah.
And to bring healing
Yes.
on them, because after being broken like that and being, used and misused and abused, you have a lot of anger, you have a lot of hurt, mistrust. So how can these young women get healed? We know through Christ, but is it programs out there that they can attend and help them recover faster?
Yeah. So one of our parts of our mission in terms of not just raising awareness, but Eric talked about funding as well. We're forming partnerships with some of those organizations that deal both on the direct service side, maybe on rescue, aftercare, some of the different facets. So one of their obstacles is that they have a waiting list a lot of times that are, 20 to 50 people long of people just waiting to get into their programs because they're in that situation that you talked about, right?
Yeah.
And so we see it as a great need. And so we are partnering with those agencies, whether they're here in Seattle, down in Los Angeles, different parts of the country, and in hopes that we can help more people. So they go to those programs to receive, inner healing. They go there for practical life skills. They go there for, help to reintegrate back into a normal society again once they're done with that program. Really everything that they need is internalized within those facilities. Because of their level of complex trauma, we call it, they can't just go to a normal school again. They don't know how to have healthy relationships. And like we talked about online, if their information is on there, they have a lot of self-image issues, and so forth. And so we have to deal with those issues. And so that's what those programs do. So there are a lot of great ones that we are partnering with. And so if anybody, wants a referral for a program, or wants to know the ones we're looking at, they can go to our website, which is www.theimass.org, and we can connect with them there.
And give that again.
Yes, it's www.theimass.org.
And please get in touch because they've given out so much information today. And all you have to do is just contact them and say, hey, I need some help on. If you don't want to give your name or whatever, just give a fictitious name and just say, hey, I need help. She needs help or whatever. Because you can do something. We can all do something, okay? And please don't feel afraid to do that. And we're on Facebook Live. You can comment and share these programs. Share them and watch it over and over and over because there's so much information in here.
Yes, definitely. And we're grateful that you allowed us to have your time today with
Grateful
your
you're here.
audience. We're very blessed by that.
Yes, yes.
And how can viewers get involved to help and end human trafficking?
Yeah.
Well, as
Eric.
far as what we do, again, by going to our website to
Right.
learn more, because our mission is to build tribes of modern day
That's good.
abolitionists.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Right? And the whole
That sounds
focus
good.
behind that is by building tribes of people that are committed to this issue, we can keep it out in front of the community. And so not only will we be working with social media influencers and celebrities, but we're going to build tribes and communities. We want people to take ownership and realize that yes, this is a dark issue, but when you feel empowered, when you feel encouraged and engaged to actually make a difference, that's how we bring light into this. This is how we make a difference.
Yeah. And I'll just speak a little more to that just to give some other ideas. One is to help raise awareness. So maybe that's, hosting an event at your school, at your church, in your local community. That could be something, just like I did with that festival, a few years back.
Yeah.
No one told me how to do that. I did it myself. I called people I knew and we made it happen. So stuff like that. I would say attend a training. A lot of organizations and local communities, they host trainings on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. So if you want to know more about, how does someone become victimized? How do you report cases?
Yes.
And you just want to meet people in the area that are those service provider agencies or lawmakers, law enforcement and stuff. That's a great way to do that. So I would say attend a training seminar. I would say do research online as well, not just on our website, but just online. There's a lot of great resources out there if you just want to learn more and feel empowered. So those are a few things off the top of my head I would just suggest.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave this out. If there's a potential situation, you might think it's a potential situation of sex trafficking, is there a 1-800 number or something someone can call and get the girls or boys help right away?
Yeah, so there's the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, which is 888-3737, 888. So you call that number, report what you see, and they'll make sure that they get you connected with the right authorities. Also contacting a lot of cities. Here in Seattle, we have a task force, and in other cities they have them as well, a human trafficking task force that specifically focus on this issue. So it's usually a department of 3 or 4 people on that committee. So contacting your local police department with that is a great way as well.
Okay, I have 2 more questions before we end up here. I would like to hear a short story of an overcoming situation. A good story about that, someone who got through that. And I also want one of you guys to speak to the men on men. Okay?
I'll let you handle the story.
Okay, I will talk about a story. There's a woman here in Snohomish in our area, and this was a few years back that I was working with her and her family, and both of her, it was her daughter and her daughter's friend, they were trafficked, so they were on a few different dating apps, and so they were talking with a few guys online. Long story short, they were lured to down here in Tacoma, actually, at Tacoma Mall. that took place. And then they found themselves in a house. They were trafficked in a house, so domestic servitude, sex trafficking there. Law enforcement got a hold of the case. They rescued the girls. They're back with their families. So all in all, it was a great ending in that regard. They're safe. They're at home. But after that, there were still some other issues to deal with, just with family dynamics or some of the different people involved in their trafficking case, some of the cops that were involved. There were some issues there as well. So just when someone gets rescued, that's not always the end of the story. There's more to deal with, but they are
Right.
safe. They are home.
Yes.
And I've developed a really good relationship with their family over the years.
Oh, that's wonderful, Phil. Thank you so much for doing that. And Eric, would you speak to the men out there?
Well, the only thing I would say to the men is realize how important you are. Okay, I know we live in a time where men are downplayed, but you are important. You are the leaders in your home. You're the leaders in the community, and realize how much you have in your hands to be able to save these children, to save people, and to lead. So take that responsibility to heart and don't let go of it.
And what about the men who are out there who's buying?
Yeah.
Could you speak to those?
So if you're out there and you're buying commercial sex, Eric really stated as well, but you are valued by God, and your mission as a man is not to turn girls into products and to promote that type of industry. Yours is to stand up and be a defender of women and to promote their well-being. And so I would say, please stop doing what you're doing. If you need help, if you know you're struggling in that area and you found yourself in a broken place, there's a lot of great resources out there for you to get assistance just in recovery for yourself. If you know that you need help, I know that law enforcement is very abreast as to what's going on. And so a lot of their role is not just to arrest people, but they actually want to help you, and they actually want to give you tools and resources so that you don't have to be a part of this behavior anymore, have to repeat these same things. So please understand that we really want you to know your role as a man, and we want you to live a different lifestyle.
Amen.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. Our time is out. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Greater Faith Outreach Ministries with Pastor Elizabeth, reaching the world with the love of God. If you'd like prayer or a copy of today's program, log on to www.greaterfaithoutreach.com or call 253-324-7902.